folks, to the SEV and Business Solutions in our weekly podcast. I'm Paul Raggio.
And I'm Lisa Raggio, and we're here today, tomorrow, and in the future to help you find your way. And we're so happy today to be having our guest on for our new episode of 2021, SchlickArt Photography and Video owners, Brian and Lindsay Schlick. So we're going to have an enlightening conversation and find out more about their last year, how they've navigated through the pandemic, and what they're envisioning for the future. So we're happy to have them on today.
Hi, thanks for having us.
And we start the podcast with a tip, and then we end the podcast with a leadership and best business practice tip. So before we get into talking to the Schlicks, we wanted to give you the first tip, and it's part of our points of culture, and it's about community. So we are dedicated to being engaged with our community members and promoting fellowship and a shared sense of purpose for each other's personal and professional endeavors. And as part of your own business operations, you should have these points of culture, which really represent the values of your business. And those values are something that you should be expressing to your constituents, both your people who work for you as well as the people outside. And then the second tip that we'll talk about afterwards is really going to be something that you can dig your teeth into about how to be a leader in 2021. And we'll cover that. It's part of our past week's article on how to be the leader that you think you can believe for 2021 to be most successful. Lisa, do you want to introduce the guests?
I do. I'd be happy to. I'm excited to hear more about what they have to say. I want to read to you their background. So Brian and Lindsay Schlick provide the community with their signature photography and video products. And I've seen them, Paul. I know you've seen them too. They're outstanding, as well as an enjoyable experience that makes being in front of the camera feel easy and fun. No experience necessary. With an expertise in everything from business to boudoir. Did I pronounce that right?
You did.
The Schlicks can create all the visuals you need for your personal life and professional life, including family portraits, glamour sessions, gorgeous boudoir portraits, legacy video, headshots, marketing photography, marketing videos, a business video subscription, and more. Soon, they'll even be launching their own video podcast service, which we're excited to find out more about. In addition to their services, the Schlicks strive to bring visual marketing and personal branding education to our community through blogs and videos. And they give back whenever they can by donating their skills and products and time to multiple charities each year. So welcome, Brian and Lindsay Schlick.
Thank you guys. Thanks for having us. We're excited.
Absolutely. So we're so happy that we're here. We've seen your work and we've gotten to know you in the community too. So everything that I just read is spot on. And Paul and I start everything, including ourselves and our business, with why and why you started SchlickArt and a little bit of that background there.
I think the beginning to the answer is probably different than the answer it would be now. But the reason why we began in the first place is because we wanted to provide real people with an experience that was normally only attainable to celebrities and models, for lack of a better word. So when we first started, we kind of created our business around the idea of a kind of a beauty pampering day is the best way to describe it. You know, Lindsay had experience in working with models and things like that, and where they got to come in and get hair and makeup done before their photo session. So they were pampered every day before they had their photo session. And we thought that when we started thinking about creating our own business, why couldn't we kind of provide that for the everyday person? And specifically back then it was a female focused clientele that we were kind of targeting, and so we kind of built our company around that. And as we gained more experience doing those kind of shoots with our clients, it evolved, and it's evolved kind of every year since then into something different and something new. So I can kind of maybe let Lindsay explain a little bit more about what that means.
Yeah,
Great.
so when we first began, you know, we noticed a lot of business people and personal people, you know, they'd go and get headshots maybe at the mall, or they'd go and get family portraits at, you know, Picture People, where the photographers were relatively inexperienced. And, you know, I think this was at the time, it was kind of like the norm for the average, you know, family, or, you know, the average business person. They had never expected anything more than, you know, you show up and it's a 5 to 10 minute session, and the photographer says to you, so strike a pose, and you're like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, you know, I don't know what looks good. This is your job, you know. And I'd come from working with a lot of models, as Brian's mentioned, and we directed everybody from head to toe. And a model knows what they're doing, they know how to look good. But even so, our job as the photographer was to pull the best experience, pull the best, you know, expressions and body style out of them, to get the best shot, to tell the story that we wanted to tell in the shot. And so I actually got laid off in the recession from the job I was doing at the time, and it was the perfect opportunity to start a small business where we could give this same experience to, you know, people who wanted it, you know, regular business people, real estate agents, you know, families, women who just, oh my gosh, women, we pick on ourselves so much as it is, let alone in a photograph, to be able to create an experience, a photography and experience, and really show a woman what her friends see in her, what her daughter sees in her, you know, everything we don't see in ourselves, what the people closest to us see. And, you know, with the right camera, with the right eye, with the right direction, you know, you can pull that out of any woman. And every single day we get, oh my gosh, is that me? Do I really look like that? Like, we get that expression, which a lot of women had never experienced before. It's actually created a movement in our photography genre, like in our field, that a lot of photographers are going this way, where the direction and the speaking to your clients and directing your clients through every shoot gets more in depth and really looks at how a woman can look her best. That's how we started SchlickArt. And then a year in, somebody said to me, I love your pampering days. I love these beauty days that you do for women, but I just need a really good headshot. Can you just give us a really good headshot? Use your light, use your direction, use your way of shooting. Can you do that for headshots? And I was like, yeah, I don't see why not. Like, and that's where we started. And then shortly after, we realized that a lot of these personal brands needed video. They needed to get themselves out online. And that's where Brian joined me at the company, and we went from there.
You know, you can certainly see the passion in both of you about this business, which is just, I mean, it gives you tingles just watching you talk about your
Thank you.
business.
We're excited.
Yeah, but when you first start a business, I got to tell you, you know it's white knuckles. You're wondering if you can really launch this. Can you get it off the ground? How much investment of time, resources do you have to put into it? So share with our audience a little bit about your thought process and what you had to do until you really started to see some traction in your business where you thought, okay, we've got a company that's going to survive.
Yeah, that's a great point. So when we, like Lindsay said, she got laid off in the recession, and that was, we had the conversation, you know, what are we going to do? It wasn't easy to, at that point, go out and search for a job because there wasn't that many jobs specifically for photographers, let alone anybody else. And if there was photography jobs, the competition was huge, right? Because there were so many people that had been laid off during the recession that everybody was applying for any kind of job to do with that. So, you know, we had discussions about whether or not we're going to start our own business, and specifically what that was going to be. You know, I think Lindsay decided early on when we were talking about starting this business was, you know, she didn't necessarily want to be known as a wedding photographer, kind of like what most photographers end up doing, because we realized quickly that weddings happen on weekends, right? And we didn't want to have to work every weekend. We liked having time to ourselves. And so we kind of just started trying to figure out ideas of ways that we can create a business that was not focused around what everybody thought a photographer kind of would or should be doing. And so that's kind of where we came and kind of settled on that idea. At the same time, I was actually still working at Princess Cruises here in Santa Clarita, working for the photography and video department for them, kind of supporting the ships. So it helped in a way support what we were doing. That yes, we had kind of a steady paycheck while we were trying to build, but at the same time, when I was not at work, I was, pushing along with Lindsay to kind of help build what that business would be. She was obviously like the head of operations kind of thing and was kind of driving what it would be, but every night we would have discussions about what was happening and how things were going. And on the weekends, we were both fully kind of working on what our business would be. And like you said, over time, it evolved into what it is now. I don't know if you have anything to add to that, Lindsay, or if I even answered your question.
Yeah, no, you're right on what I was going to say, but all I would add is, so it's kind of funny. I come from a family of accountants. Everybody in my family, apart from me, is an accountant. And
Wow.
so me spending money on something that was, something had never been done before, I guess, or it felt like at the time nothing had ever been done before. If we'd have just come out of the gate saying, I want to be a family and wedding photographer and everything to look like everybody else's, then maybe we would have had some advice, but given to us, but we didn't have that for what we were trying to build. And I'm a firm believer in you don't spend money on something until you can see that it's working. And I came into the business, I heard somebody say once, over, under, through. A child or a baby, when you put an obstacle in front of them, they go over, under, through. They have no fear, they figure it out, right? And as adults, we go, well, I can't afford to do that, so I'm just not even going to try, And so we would sit at home at night after like a day of struggling, trying to figure something out and figure out ways to market or to, go out there and do everything as much as we possibly can at the time for free so that we didn't have to spend money on it. And photographers and a lot of different businesses, they have a habit of spending money on the shiny things, oh, I have to have the best camera, or I have to have the best set of backgrounds, or I have to have the best this, that, and the other. But those toys don't make you money. Marketing, meeting people, setting your business up properly, that makes you money. So we were very firm from the beginning to not spend anything on the bright, shiny objects. We can buy the bright, shiny objects as we make money. It's like a reward for all your hard work, so to speak, So we went out and that's how we worked. And for 3 years, we just kept our heads down and we just worked. We didn't let the noise in from anybody saying this is a really bad idea. We didn't let let anything bother us. And we spent very little. I don't think we went out for like 3 years. We were very, very, involved in this. And then as the third year came around, you start to pop your head up and you're like, don't say it too loud, it's working, And we started doing that. And then we started to meet a lot of people in the community who we could invest in to make our business grow. Now that we had a little bit of money in the business, I'm a firm believer in you can't know everything about your business. As I said, my entire family is an accountant. I'm not an accountant. I firmly believe in a good CPA, and I firmly believe in a good, money manager, and investing in those people. But it has to be at the right time. And that was the right time for us. And that's when we really started to skyrocket because we were getting really great advice from really great peers.
Boy, some excellent insight there, Lindsay. And I'm mindful too of when you're talking about over, under, through, and I've been a witness to my 3 children go through those iterations. Behind all, it may be hard to see, but part of our marketing is find your way. And that comes from, I think her name is Diana Nyad. She was the swimmer that swam an extremely long distance. And when she was on an interview, she said her motto was find a way. You just got to keep. And then I love the surfing metaphor for me because I'm a wannabe surfer. It's called head down, keep paddling. So you just have to keep your head down and keep on paddling and get you through that. And then, the other thing that came to mind when you were talking at first, your passion for it. I will say I've only been with you a couple of times, but my sense is another quote, people will walk away and not remember what you said or did, but they'll remember how you made them feel. And something about your approach and presence that makes them feel in a way that they can probably express themselves authentically on film. And then that's captured. And I love what you said about women. I know that we just had my oldest daughter over the holidays just set up taking a picture of all the family. And while we were doing it, I said, hey, I have a friend who always knows how to look and how to be. I missed all of that. And I think you're right. There is something about being directed and led. I think that's a part of leading them through, getting them comfortable, leading them through, and bring out the best of themselves on film. That's
definitely.
And listening to what they have to say. I mean, a lot of photographers will be like, okay, come in and we're going to do the same thing that I do every single time. But nobody's the same. Nobody's business is the same. Nobody's likeness is the same. Nobody's mind is the same. Nobody's story is the same. And so we are very cognizant of trying to listen to our clients because everybody's needs are different. And women, especially moms, don't get to tell their story very often. They're dealing with everybody else's story, the kids, husbands, everybody else's story. To give a woman, especially a mom, a chance to just speak until she's done, is a big thing. Right? And that's something we do a lot in the studio. And we have women walk out going, oh my God, I feel like I was just in a therapy session. Because you get that option to say, say how you feel and just be you for a day. Yeah.
And I think part of what that does too for us is that it keeps it interesting for us too, right? Because if we set up the same, no offense to people that use it, but the same marble backdrop and took headshots on that and just said, move your chin this way, move your chin that way, it would get boring for us too. And same with videos, if we ask the same questions every single time, for us, it would just get monotonous because eventually you just start hearing the same answers because everybody would go, oh, I heard them ask this question before, I'm going to answer it this way, I already know. And so for us, it keeps it super interesting. And, part of kind of what Lindsay touched on a little bit, which was what really helped grow our business, is going out and networking. And that was something that we at first were super scared and super nervous and afraid to do, but eventually it became more natural to us, and we kind of tend to enjoy it. I wouldn't say all the time, but we tend to enjoy it more. Not that we've been able to do it most recently with COVID, but just to go out and actually interact with people and get to know them is part of a big part of what's interesting about our job, because we get to learn about what people do and what makes them tick, kind of similar to what you guys are doing with us right now, right? You're getting to learn more about, two people that you've met and kind of know, but don't know a lot about. So it keeps it interesting for you, and it keeps it interesting for us for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, you've both of you brought up some great points here that fledgling businesses often find they're trapped with. And that's to avoid those bright, shiny objects that you're talking about. Stay laser focused on what you want to do. And the most important thing is that you have to be all in. If you're going to start a business, you have to be committed. It isn't something that you can do. You can do it as a hobby, but you're not going to make money.
Yeah.
I mean, if that's what you want to do. But if you want to do it as your business, truly something that you can see growing and scaling in the future, and it's something that's going to achieve your personal dreams that you want to get after, then you've got to be all in. And
Totally
and
agree.
what you talked about, really focusing on the foundation of the business. We talk to our clients all the time about that. What's the foundation of your business? How do you establish that, and how do you stay committed to your core competencies, and that you don't go outside of that? Because that's where a lot of businesses will get lost. And when you're lost or there's chaos in your business, you expend resources,
Mhm.
and
Definitely.
it just costs you time and money doing that. But you
Definitely.
brought up something else too. That's we've certainly noted about the both of you. Not only do you network, but you're very involved in the community. Talk a little bit about your community involvement, and why this is a conscious choice on your part to be involved and engaged, because again, it takes time. Talk a
Yeah.
little bit about, your decisions on why you got involved in the community, how you're involved, and how you think that helps not only your businesses but other businesses.
Yeah, I mean, I think Lindsay could correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the first kind of networking thing we ever did in Santa Clarita was a JC event. I can't even remember what it was, a mixer of some kind. But I think Neil Fitzgerald is very involved in the JCs, invited us to, and we knew absolutely nobody in the room. We went to the bar and got a beer and a glass of wine or whatever we ended up getting, and stood in the corner and probably talked to two people, both of whom came up to us. We definitely did not go up to them. But
And we were probably very socially awkward as well.
oh yeah, we were stood in the corner, like barely even talking to each other, let alone anybody else. We were just watching and going, what is this? We have no idea what we're doing here. But I think what came of that is because we were kind of recent friends with Neil, he kept inviting us, and if anybody knows Neil, he's pretty persistent about getting people to do things that he thinks that they should be doing. So he kept inviting us, and we, for some reason, kept going. So eventually we met people and kind of grew through that, and that led to other networking events and more networking events. And what we got out of it was being introduced to people in Santa Clarita, which is our market. Those are the people that we're trying to get to know, so that we can tell them about what we do and get to know them better. So we quickly realized that going out to these events and getting involved in them, it really helped our business. And I mean, Lindsay can talk for days about like all the stuff that we've done specific to being part of the community. I think she joined the Single Mothers Outreach Board pretty early on as well.
I think the Single Mothers Outreach Board led us to the JCs, because I was just nominated. Yeah. So a contact through Princess, when we first started SchlickArt, a contact through Princess reached out to us, Jackie Chase, and she said, every year I sponsor the Empowering Hearts Single Mothers Outreach event, and I do so by paying for the photographer to go to the event. Would you be the photographer this year? And so we went along and photographed this charity event that I had absolutely no idea what it was, or what Single Mothers Outreach was, or anything like that. Jackie literally just told me, this is the event. You've done event photography, because I used to work for Princess Cruises, so she knew that I'd done event photography years and years ago, back in like 2005. And so she was like, can you just go do this? Here's the time, here's where you're going, this is what we need you to photograph. And so I went, and I very quickly learned who Diane Smith was, who was the executive director of Single Mothers Outreach at the time. Now, if you've never met Diane Smith, my gosh, what an empathetic ray of sunshine that woman is. And she was just very motivating, and just very giving of her time, and her and her husband Bob are just like salt of the earth people. And we became very fast friends very quickly. And the next minute, I'm on the board for Single Mothers Outreach, chairing the marketing committee, because this woman, you do not say no to her. She's the amount she gives to the community, you just want to help. Yeah. And that basically led us from there. And it made us, when we were starting SchlickArt and we were writing our policies and procedures and our core values for what we wanted SchlickArt to be, after meeting this person, she, you know, motivated us that being part of the community who was, you know, if you think about it, our community gives us money. Like, we create a service for them and we take care of them and they take care of us. And so we just wanted a way to give back. And, you know, we've always, since that point, you know, considered it part of our core values that this is what we need to do. This is the type of business we want to be, you know, this is the reputation we want to have.
Excellent. There's a lot of clarity there when you talk. And you also, when you first started to talk about community at the beginning, a few minutes ago, you said the word invest, an investment, and that it is an investment. And the more that we have all of us thinking in those ways, you know, we're all in this together. That's been a slogan with the pandemic, but the truth is that was the truth before there was the pandemic.
Yeah.
And the more that people act in that way, I'm lucky to have been in the nonprofit sector for 20 years now, and I really believe in its value and it's being integrative a part of our communities and how we can all benefit from each other with our cross-sector backgrounds.
Yeah.
One thing I'm mindful of is, I think our listeners, and I know I'm interested, and I know Paul would be too, the pandemic. And how has your business been impacted? Have you had to pivot? How have you had to pivot? Because I think there's some things we could learn from you all based upon what we've seen you do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so a couple things on that front. Yeah, so January of 2020, we moved into the space that we're currently both sat in, which is our studio. We had our ribbon cutting with the chamber. I can't remember the exact date, but it was the Friday before.
It was March. It was either March 13th or March 19th, something like that. Yeah.
It was the Friday before we got told that stay-at-home order was in effect, which meant we could obviously not come to the studio. Heartbreaking, to say the least. We took a couple computers home and took some of our equipment home and went and kind of licked our wounds at home for a couple days. But what that did for us is it forced us, right, to sit there and think about how we were going to do the word you said, which is pivot. So we kind of took it upon ourselves to have a strategic planning meeting at that time. We kind of figured out things that we could do, things that we couldn't do, how we could still kind of serve our clients, and things that we would have to pull back on. So a few things that we did to kind of adapt to what was happening was we already had kind of an existing, what we call a visual marketing presentation. It's a presentation that helps people create visual content for themselves using their iPhone or similar equipment. So we took it upon ourselves to film that presentation from home and break it up into kind of bite-sized chapters. It's on YouTube. You can watch it there. It's free, kind of open to anybody. We also then created, because we knew at some point we were going to be allowed to come back to our studio, we created with our partners a bunch of different collateral, whether that was marketing collateral or legal collateral, that would kind of allow us to socially responsibly and safely reopen. So that we created a bunch of rules and policies about how we personally would reopen, and then how we would communicate that to our clients to say that we're open and we're safe and we're doing things the way that we should be doing them. So we had Hillary Broadwater from QM Design create us some marketing collateral. We had Kirsten Quinn from Quinn Smith write us some marketing blog material. We had Poole and Shaffrey write up us a legal contract and modify our existing legal contract, kind of incorporate COVID into that, just so that we could show people and show our clients that, hey, we're taking this seriously and that we're doing things right. So that's kind of how we business-wise kind of pivoted. I don't know if you have anything to add to that, Lindsay, but
Yeah,
personally.
so I think the one thing that I would say that maybe the audience doesn't realize, up until January
Yeah,
2020, our studio had been in our home.
yeah,
Mm.
And so we decided it was time to move into a studio and move it out of our house. And when we got shut down, we started to panic because we were now paying for a rented space. But then
yeah,
halfway through, realized, wow, if we had never moved out of our home, we would not be able to operate right now.
Right.
Because no, there's so many photographers right now who have studios in their home and they legally cannot or are not supposed to be. I don't want to step on anybody's toes or out anybody, but you shouldn't be inviting anybody into your home, right? You're allowed your family members inside your home, and everybody else has to be outside as far as like the laws go. So what turned out to be a scary moment in, you know, late March, early April, when we were told we had the stay-at-home order, we we realized it was the best thing that we could have ever done to stay in business, And then
yeah.
in March, I think it was like March 15th or May 15th
Maybe.
or May 20th, we were allowed to come back to the office. And, we just worked on, a lot of outdoor personal branding shoots where we could stay, with a 70 to 200 millimeter lens. There's absolutely no reason for me to get anywhere near my clients, let alone 6 feet. It's probably more like 10 feet, to be able to do outdoor branding shoots, outdoor video shoots, outdoor family shoots. It's having the ability to not believe in the term, well, this is the way I've always done it, you can do whatever you want. It's your business. Pivot, just move. You can do anything you want. The world's your oyster. And having that kind of mindset, then, oh no, what are we going to do? The other thing I think, we learned is I'm not to have a huge ego, because it's not a good thing. I'm a really hard worker and I will work harder than anybody, but that's not necessarily a good thing. And the one thing that 2020 taught me is, like, you don't always have to be working. You deserve time off. You deserve self-care. You deserve to take a beat. And yeah, we didn't make as much as we wanted to make in 2020, but that's okay, because this is a marathon, not a sprint. And we've got another 20 years at this. Like, a glitch in the system is not the end, right? And just learning to scale back and, and lick your wounds and pick it up and, pivot, you know.
Right.
Well, from a business experience, you guys have built a lot of muscle because you're going to have, times in the future that are going to be tough too.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
a lot of it will, let's face it, you guys decided to make a decision to move out of your house and into commercial space. That's huge for
Mhm.
a
Yeah.
business to take that step. Again, you're going to think, wow, there's going to be risk involved in that.
Yeah.
And certainly the way you both have been growing your business now, you're going to scale again.
Yeah.
And anytime you scale, it's fraught with uncertainty and risk. And are you doing the right things by scaling? Um, so the lessons you learned during this pandemic are certainly going to help you. And
Yes,
some of the
definitely.
things that, I'll just tell you, and it gives me chills because we talk a lot about this, and you guys are actually doing it. I mean, we talk about, especially with businesses when the pandemic first hit, communicate, communicate, communicate. You
Yeah.
have to market your business and let them know that you're in business for business. It means you can change the tone of your message. It could be more empathetic, but you have to communicate that you're in business and all the things that you're doing to help the community in terms of the services you provide. So communicating that you're COVID safe was absolutely essential to help you guys through your business.
Yeah.
So I mean, some real practical things there that would certainly help our audience, even with those businesses today that haven't taken the steps that you've taken so far.
I
Right.
think just to add one other thing to that, I think a lot of business people, and again, when we first started, we were guilty of this. A lot of us feel like an island and we have to do everything ourselves. That's impossible. That's absolutely impossible. I'm not a lawyer. I can't write a COVID health declaration form. You know, I'm not a CPA. I'm, you know, or a bookkeeper. You know, if you, you know, or even just getting financial advice from the right professional, you know, nobody's blaming you or
Makes you weak.
there's no need to be embarrassed to ask for help at all. You know, everybody's struggling right now, and to reach out to your peers and have people in your corner, cheerleaders who want to see you succeed. They don't want you to fail because you pay their bills as well. Like, you know, when I call Paul and Shaffrey, you know there's going to be a bill at the end, but hey, they're in the long run, it's helping us stay alive. It's an investment, and investing in your business in those ways and getting professionals to give you real advice and stand behind you when times are tough is really important.
That's excellent,
Great
Lindsay.
attitude.
Excellent point in regards to the difference between an expense and an investment, and everything that you've said speaks to that. There's so many things that we parallel with you, even the language in Paul and I in our coaching that I know it's very encouraging to hear. We want to hear about the video podcast service that you're going to be offering, because that's some exciting news for people to look forward to in the new year. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
I'm going to throw it to you, Lindsay. You're going to be way better at explaining this than I am.
So this
I'm
has
like
been
the technician on this thing, so.
Yeah, no, this has been my baby, I must admit. Like, I wanted to do this for a really, really long time. You know, a lot of people will come in for business videos, which are extremely important. And there's, you know, a lot of people will create audio files for, you know, for podcasting that they can use little snippets here and there. But the way we've created our video podcasting line of our business is very unique. So we wanted to create a platform where a person of authority, or, you know, a business owner with something to teach or say, could come into the studio once a month and shoot 2 podcasts. So we like to do things in twos because, you know, as we were talking before we started the show with Paul, that you know, it's a huge investment to create a podcast like this. There must have been so much work behind it, and you have to be ready to do this weekly and, you know, create it. It's difficult when you've got a full-time job and you know, family and everything else going on. So we wanted to create the podcast where we would shoot 2 a day. The host could have, you know, guests on their show. You know, we would have sponsors in between, and I'll speak a little bit more about that in a minute. But with this show, the great thing about it is it's a video podcast. So when you come to us as a host wanting to create a podcast, not only will you get an audio file that you can use on the multiple podcasting platforms, you'll also get the video file. And with that, then if you want to cut snippets out to use for different marketing, if you want to play the full audio file on your own YouTube channel, you can. There's multiple different facets that podcast can be broken down into, and they can also give the podcast to their guests to use in many different ways. Now, the other great thing that we're doing about it is we're guiding the host through the entire podcast. So we've set up a questionnaire and a structure to basically, how do you start a podcast? We have a full, like, basically a rabbit hole to go down before you start your podcast. We don't, you know, the wilderness wife right now is like, we want to create a podcast kind of thing, and they don't think of the direction, or it might fizzle out after you know, a couple of episodes, because there's a lot of hard work, and again, there's a lot of investment up front. So we created a rabbit hole to go down to really iron out your marketing, your voice, your, you know, the culture of this podcast, what you're hoping to achieve, who your target market is, all of that fun stuff. And you fill that out at the beginning of coming to us for us to produce your podcast. from that, we even talk about what kind of set do you want. You know, we want this podcast to represent your business. You know, we'll work with you to create a set in our studio. We ask you to just go out and buy a couple of pieces to design it how you like, and we set that up. You know, once a month we'd have you bring those pieces to the studio. We set it up. We have multiple backgrounds that you could choose from to really design it and make it look like your brand. That's, you know, most important for us, is that it looks like your brand. And then on a monthly basis, we send you a second questionnaire that specifically talks about that episode. Okay, you have this guest on. What do you want to do with this guest? What kind of questions do you want? What are you trying to pull out? What are you trying to achieve by having this person on? And then we break it down and fully direct and produce the podcast from start to finish. So, so it's a big production. And the greatest part about it is, as the host, you don't technically have to pay for the podcast yourself. What we're doing is we're breaking the podcast down. Do you want a half an hour podcast? Do you want a 45 minutes, or do you want an hour podcast? You let us know. And then we've also created collateral for you to go out and find sponsors for your podcasts. So let's say you're a real estate agent that wants to start a podcast and you want to talk about all things real estate. We've put together a letter that you would send to your peers saying, do you want to sponsor my show? Then we will create an advertisement for that sponsor that they get to keep and they can use whenever they want for their own. You know, they could put it on their website, they could use it on their own, but that advertisement, that commercial, will go in between the show. Okay. Now, for instance, a 60-minute podcast, there would be 4 sponsors. If you want to be a sponsor yourself, you can, and you would pay for a portion of your own podcast, you know, and then there'd be 3 other who would also pay towards that podcast. And we get them to the sponsors to sign up for a 6-month contract, and they get to keep their video themselves and use it on whatever else they want to use it, but it will be in between each of the breaks in the podcast. And that way it's a win-win for everybody. You get sponsors for your show gets to run. You're not the one who's worrying, you know, how am I going to pay for this podcast every month? It's just a win-win all round, and it gets more voices to your show because, you know, people are going to tell, oh, my commercial is in between this podcast. I'm supporting this other person in the community. And it's just a win-win for everybody. So we've been building this over the course of the past 6 months, and we're actively going to start this January going out and looking for different people in the community that might be interested in starting a fully produced podcast. We have one person right now, Amanda Benson. We're so excited for her podcast. It's going to be coming out towards the end of January. She's filmed her first 4 episodes. She has 2 more to film this month. But hers is ready to go. And you know, we're all set with that one. And we have 2 other potential people who are interested in hosting their podcast, and they're about a variety of different things. You know, Amanda Benson is Ask Amanda with business coaching. We have a women's group who was interested in talking about all things women. So it's really interesting, and we're really excited for how this is going to play out over the next year.
That's very exciting.
Yeah,
Very
that's great.
exciting news. And what a great way to start the year and to maximize and leverage the past year that we've had. And one of those things that this is something that can really grow in the time of COVID.
Yeah, and we went to a couple of different networking events and spoke to some pretty big speakers who already have like an Instagram following, and they were literally saying there's nowhere in Santa Clarita or the North LA area, there's no production houses doing podcasts, there's no studios with the capability to do podcasts. And we're like, yeah, we're right here. We have all the capabilities to create this for you. So that's basically how it got started.
I love it.
Yeah, that's terrific. Well, let's talk a little bit about our leadership tip of the week. And our past article this week, it's titled, "It's 2021 and You Want to Be a Leader." And so let me ask you guys, have you ever seen Apollo 13, the movie with Ron Howard produced it and Tom
Years
Hanks is
ago,
in it?
yeah.
Yeah,
I've
I
seen it
wouldn't
before,
remember
years ago.
anything about it, but yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's a terrific movie if you want to see the best in leadership. So it was a 1970 aborted space flight. It was commanded by Jim Lovell. And this movie really talks about the flight director and how he had to bring the entire orchestra of scientists, engineers, medical personnel together to get a spacecraft that was crippled back to Earth. They didn't complete their mission. They were supposed to land on the moon, but get them back to Earth. So the tip is that looking at Gene Kranz was the director of the space flight, and if you've done any research on Kranz himself, he's just a tremendous person of character. So I mean, that's the first tip. If you want to be a leader, you have to be a person of character. The second is that he had a vision, and you could Ed Harris played him in the movie. You could just see Ed Harris mimicking Kranz's way of how do you get these three astronauts back in a crippled spacecraft to Earth safely. I mean, it was unbelievably played, but he had a vision. And then the third thing, that the third tip for any leader that is aspiring to be one or grow one, for you too, it's how do you communicate that? And so you have to be able to communicate it clearly, directly, purposefully, and inspirationally. And you see that in the movie. So I just encourage anyone that's looking for leadership positions, and I know both of you again hold leadership positions in the community, but this is something that you can really sink your teeth into and teach others. Be a person of character, have a vision, and be able to clearly, directly, purposefully, and inspirationally communicate that vision. And you're going to have followers. You will always have followers if you follow that recipe. Any thoughts on that before we?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that's a huge part of it. Communication is a big one. Something that we feel really strongly about is that whether that's communicating out to your clients or communicating internally, it's something that I think Lindsay and I, on a business level, have been really good at making sure that we know that we're all both on the same page and making sure that the messaging that's going out to whoever's in front of us, whether it's digitally or in person, like they know that we're all on the same page and working as a team. So I think that's a huge one. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm mindful, Paul, of that movie. For us, our dad worked at Jet Propulsion Laboratory for almost 40 years and was a part of the pioneers in space industry from the first satellite that launched in United States, and then thereafter for almost 40 years. So that film too, with what you said, you know, Lindsay, when you started with over, under, through observations of little people and their maturation, there's a wonderful scene in Apollo 13 where they throw down everything on the conference room table and they say, find a way, find a way to figure this out. And so a few other takeaways from our conversation before we come to a close is, you know, that one, over, under, through, marketing is an investment, not an expense. What I heard you say is forced evolution. You had 2 days when the pandemic started, but then you went, okay, now let's start to plan. Did strategic planning. You looked at your communicating. You looked at marketing, the legal end of it. You talked about focus, and we say focus is follow one course until successful, and the value of that. And then pivoting, Lindy had mentioned you got to move and your mindset, and they go hand in hand. So we want to thank you so much. If somebody listens to this podcast, they'll get a lot of value. Paul, as Paul said, some of us and everybody's, you know, we've never been through a pandemic before. So some of us are still in parts of that fight, flight, freeze, which is a physiological response to what happens when we're in some kind of crisis. But if you take just one of these things that we've learned today and start on it, you're going to see what the return on that investment is in your energy moving forward. How can people find out more about your business, and how can they contact you?
So two ways, or many ways they can find us. We have our website, schlickart.com. We also have a blog on there that's a resource. We like to think of it as a resource anyway for the community. It gives visual marketing tips for both photo and video podcasting soon. And those are they're like actual usable tips. It's not just us trying to sell you something. It's a legitimate educational blog. You can find us anywhere on social media. That's Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. All of those are SchlickArt, all one word. And you can call us or email us. My number is 661-309-5326. Lindsay is 661-313-3907. And then emails are brian@schlickart.com or lindsay@schlickart.com. Those are pretty much all the ways you can find us.
One other thing to that, just because Valentine's is coming up, and for those who don't know, I shoot a lot of boudoir photography, and I have the Fabulous Feministas page on Instagram if you wanted to follow us through that, and the SchlickArt page. That's for women only, so sorry, gentlemen, you're kicked out of that one.
I can't even get into it.
Yeah, he's not even allowed on it. It's just us girls. But we have that page, and yeah, sorry, shameless plug. But it's booty call time.
And Lindsay, you said Fabulous Feminista?
Yeah, the full handle is, oh, I just had it right there. Yeah, fab_fems, FEMS_by_Schlickart is
Wow.
the
That's on Instagram.
Yeah.
My goodness. Well, this has been truly a pleasure. I know Paul's going to share in just a minute some ways in which listeners can be engaged, upcoming events. We always give out a small business shout out on our weekly podcast. And so we're going to talk today just for a few minutes about CNA Cafe and Creamery, which is a family-owned business in Santa Clarita Valley. And the C stands for their son, Christian, who is 11 years old. And the A stands for their daughter, who is 9. And they came up with the idea and the business plan. The kids did. They drew the logo, Christian's Candy Wall, as well as Audrey's Cookie Corner. And they sell delicious ice cream with unique flavors like Mom's Apple Pie Ice Cream, Carrot Cake Ice Cream, and their newest flavor, Donuts and Coffee Ice Cream. They also have ice cream sandwiches, which consist of cookies like pancake and bacon, red velvet, salted caramel, and their lemon bars are out of this world. I've had one and they are. So you can visit their store at 19375 Plum Canyon Road in Santa Clarita. Their phone number is 661-367-4758, and you can follow them on Facebook at C&A Cafe and Creamery and Instagram at C&A Cafe.
Beautiful.
Wow.
And one of the things that we really want to plug for the Chamber of Commerce, and Brian is the chair of the Small Business Committee on the Chamber, but every second Friday of the month, we hold a small business roundtable. It's facilitated by Paul Butler of New Leaf Development and myself. And Brian's there, of course, but it's an opportunity for business owners in the Santa Clarita Valley who are chamber members to participate really in a conversation. It has educational content, but it's a conversation on how you can really improve your business, and you share different challenges that you may have had. Starts at 7 o'clock, ends at 8:30. So that's every second Friday. And Brian, I don't know if you want to say anything about that, but it's a great opportunity for business owners.
Absolutely, it's a fantastic group. Last month we had Andrea de Lacerda talking about marketing tips as the kind of featured speaker, and it was amazing. It's just a really great group of kind of open conversation about kind of like what we've done today. But if people have kind of challenges within their business, they can kind of talk to them and maybe ask for advice within the group, and it's all kind of confidential and a kind of an open space so that you can kind of speak to other business owners and learn from it. It's a really, really good opportunity. If you're a chamber member, definitely make sure that you come in and attend and check it out, because it's really worthwhile.
And if you're not a chamber member, join the chamber. I
Absolutely.
mean, they've got just a lot of programs that are beneficial to the business community at large. So it's something that
So many, yeah,
you really ought to consider.
definitely.
Absolutely.
So that's what I had.
Yeah, and I'll close out. But Lindsay, you know, you've been very involved with the Empowering Women's Luncheon with the Chamber. So I just,
Yeah,
if
so
about-
I'll actually be a chamber board member this year. So I'll be on the main board, but I'm also the chair of the next SEV, which is the under 40 chamber. And myself and Jennifer Abbott Aston are facilitating, well, helping out as much as we can for the Women's Network, which I think we're going to start that one back up in February, just because there's a lot of chamber events happening in January, including the awards and installation. So yes, purchase your tickets for the awards and installation. I'm going to plug that right now because a lot of small businesses have been nominated. You know,
Yeah.
this year you didn't have to be a chamber member to be nominated. So let's all band together and have and it's online. It'll be on the Remo app, which will be fantastic. And you know, we can network and be socially distant at the same time.
Excellent.
Terrific.
Well, thank you. As we close out, we invite listeners to visit our website, onetruenorthcoach.com. You can find out a lot of information about who Paul and I are, how we serve, our vision, our mission, our purpose, how we help business owners, what makes us unique. And we also have a COVID-19 resource page that we've added to since the beginning of the pandemic based upon feedback from our clients regarding what's helping them. So we encourage you to look at that, and we offer a complimentary business diagnostic, no strings attached. It's a great way for people to get good questions from Paul and I, to have them think, especially at the beginning of the year, to really think about how they envision their business and ways in which they could be successful in achieving those objectives. So visit our website, contact us for a free business diagnostic, and we also have a One True North Facebook and LinkedIn page. And we keep that updated with articles, information, and things that are value added for you as a business owner and an organizational leader. And with that, thank you very much. And we look forward to seeing everybody next week. And Brian and Lindsay, we look forward to seeing you virtually in the very near future, and then in person someday in the not so distant future.
Definitely.
Thank you for having
Thank you,
us.
guys. Thank you for having us. It was a lot of fun.
Thank you for your time.